that. Hey everybody, I am DL Golden.
And I am SF Rogers.
And we are the Author's Chaos. Today we are speaking with Ben Schenkman. Am I saying that right?
Schenkman.
So close. So, Ben, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are.
Yeah, so it's great to be on the podcast, so thanks for having me on. So I am Ben Schenkman. I'm an urban fantasy author. I published my first book in December of last year, so, not even a year ago yet. It's called My Boss is the Devil. It is, it's a fun exploration of kind of what is good, what is evil. It's about a young barista named Nick who gets a chance to get out of his dead-end life and go work for the devil, except the offer isn't what he expects, and neither is Lucifer. Since then, I have also published the second book in the series. It's a 3-book series that came out June 28th, and I'm currently working on getting the third book through edits. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I have a boring day job and all the other stuff. I live in Massachusetts with my youngest son and my partner and 3 cats. So.
Hey, that is a perfectly good life to live, I think. So you're doing good.
I think so. As a dog mom, I have animals and a child. Okay, cool. You're cool. You're a vibe. You're a vibe already.
So what gave you the idea to come up with a story where your main character is
signing up to work
for the devil himself?
So I started writing this a long time ago. So like the first book has like been a journey, though unfortunately, as many of us, it was a journey of inactivity for a while. But I was working what I considered to be a dead end job at the time. It wasn't the usual kind of job for most, but like I didn't feel like I had a lot of prospects, and I'm pretty sure I asked myself at the time, like, what if I got a job offer from the devil? Like, because that's an interesting concept, and what would happen, and what if it was actually a good job, and what if it wasn't kicking puppies and doing bad things? So that was the concept, and I wrote it from that perspective. One of the continuous themes in the books that I write is it's the exploration of good and evil, but it has much less to do with the supernatural than it does about people and society, and more about how that it's like if you could boil it down to something, you'd say, oh, I guess it was how we treat each other and capitalism the whole time. Like that was that's kind of the theme.
That's awesome.
I love it. That's fantastic.
I absolutely love that. So I have to ask, because I think it's an interesting thing to like write about Lucifer, the occult. I think that's an interesting thing. Coming out of heavy religion, and like navigating that deconstruction stuff. Did this have anything to do with that? Were you raised in like a super religious home, or just no?
No, I'm Jewish, but like culturally Jewish. It's how I was raised. Personally, I consider myself more of a spiritual person than a religious one at this point. So it was more that I think I felt free to explore the theme using a framework that people would understand, that has some pretty stark like guidelines, while turning it on its head. Because again, yes, modern like media has turned Lucifer into this like sexy character that everyone likes. To be fair, I wrote the first book well before Lucifer, the TV series, ever existed. So yeah, it gave me a framework to work with, and then to also subvert expectations. So no, I don't come from a heavily religious background, but I understand. For my second book, I actually had someone in a review say that my book actually did a lot to help them with their religious trauma because of the way that I handled it.
That's nice. Awesome and very needed.
Very needed.
So definitely can appreciate that. You said you had written this first book before the series Lucifer had come out. How long have you been working on this series?
So I started writing this book when I was working at that job back in like 2006.
Okay.
Um, but then I finished the first like mostly full draft of it in National Novel Writing Month 2014. Uh, and then I did a little bit of the hazing ritual. I sent some queries and tried to pursue agents, and then decided that the lack of response was a sign that it just wasn't the time. At the time, self-publishing wasn't as accepted as it is now. I had tried to get my book crowdfunded through Inkshares, which I think they still exist, but it was one of the few things like back around the 2014, 15 era when you could like crowdfund a book through a service through pre-orders, and that didn't work because no matter how much we all would like to think that we have 200 people who would buy our book, we don't.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been, and then, life got in the way. I had my eldest son, who's my stepson, and then I had my son now who's 8. So, well, life gets in the way and I shelved it for, almost 10 years.
That's
I love hearing about like coming back to writing
yeah.
after taking a break. And I think the reason why is because I took such a long break in my own journey to get to this point where I'm now published, that like it's awesome to see that like you're not alone out there, and like the hey, I have life is lifing and I have to put this away and I want it, but I don't know where I'm going from here. And then to come back to it and the sweetness of that. When you came back to it, did you have like this renewed vigor that like I'm going to do this, like this is going to happen?
So let me tell you, National Novel Writing Month, so NaNoWriMo 2023, so last year, I wrote the sequel. I wrote 90% of it during November for NaNoWriMo, and I finished it in December.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, it took me like 10 plus years to get the first book out the door, and then I wrote the second book within 2 months.
Oh, wow.
And then the third book I started writing in January ish, probably February, because so my neurodivergence allows me to do 2 things at once, but not 3.
Yes.
And I had been trying to do too many things. I had been editing book 2, writing book 3, and considering recording, like as read by the author, recording my audiobooks. And so I decided I needed to put one of those things down, and then finished editing book 2, and then started writing book 3 probably in February. And I finished the draft of book 3 by like early June. So yeah, I've had a lot of renewed vigor for writing. I've written a short story that's a prequel for book 1. That's going to be available through my newsletter.
Oh, that's cool.
And I'm also I'm 90% of the way through recording book 1 as an audiobook for the raw audio.
That's awesome.
So you said it took you 10 years. There was this big hiatus. What was the catalyst for coming back and saying, okay, I'm going to finish this?
Sorry, I'm laughing because it's a funny story. It actually involves like the platform we're on right now. So I don't know if anyone else follows, and I like to give her a shout out because this is legit how it happened. But if you follow Atomic Apple Pie, she does the reading bad prose written by men, especially like bad romance writing. She's got like the spray bottle and like sprays the screen.
So I know exactly what you're talking about now. I just didn't know my name.
Yeah, so that's Atomic Apple Pie, and I was watching one of her posts, and it was just terrible. And I said to myself, I wrote a book, and I realized like the shadow's doing terrible things for my face right now, and like my book can't be nearly as bad as any of this. So nope, that's worse. So yeah, I decided at that point, like, oh, I wrote a book and it's not terrible. Like, even if it's not the best book in the world, it's not these, and these are published. So yeah. I deserve to be published. So I didn't bother trying to like do any of the trad pub junk again. I just went straight to self-publishing. I engaged some early readers. I I added about 10 to 15,000 words. I had the manuscript professionally edited previously, so I mostly just like did a couple rounds of self and friend edits to cover the new stuff.
Hmm.
And then that was it. Like it took me a number of months. I probably decided to do it, I don't know, March or April of 2023, and then I had published it by December.
That's good. That's a
Yeah.
decent turnaround.
Yeah,
Though. I mean,
100%.
it took me 3 years for Origins when I started writing it. And then I learned, oh, you can just self-publish your stuff instead of waiting and thinking, oh, I'm going to traditionally publish this. So I definitely understand switching routes and trying to get the thing out there. I think it's cool that when you hear published works and you're like, oh my gosh, that is not great. I can definitely do that
Do a
better.
little better than that, right?
And so I definitely understand that. I think that's a great reason for getting back into it. I mean, I think everyone's story deserves to be told.
I think there's room for all of us at the table.
Yeah, exactly. And so that is a really cool aspect to this, because my writing journey, I started writing my first book and I was like, okay, if I get this published, I get this published. And come to find out, my sister-in-law was publishing a book. And I told Sarah about it, and she told everybody I know, and so it ended up getting out there to
You're
everybody.
welcome.
So it just kind of outgrew from there. So I think it's cool that we all have these different stories that fall into that.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Like I can do this. Like I can do this. If they can do it, I can do it too. Like I can do this.
Well, and you sound like you have such a cool concept going on for your book.
So tell us more, if you can, without spoiling it. Can you tell us like what your blurb says or more about your book?
Yeah. Let's see. So the blurb on the back of my book, I think, is too long to just like read for the video, but effectively, you know, the micro blurb for book one is something along the lines of, you know, Nick's mundane life is upended by a job offer from the devil. He's going to need more than coffee to decide his fate. The coffee's a big theme in book one, and it carries through into book two, and even a bit in book three. I'm a coffee nut. I enjoy it myself, and that's kind of where that comes from. But book one starts with Nick. Like it's urban fantasy, so it's first person point of view. That's you know, correct for the genre. But it's one point of view. It's just Nick for the first book. There are some supporting characters, and the key supporting character to point out in book one is Amy, who is the goth witch in the book. And then book two, which is, so the book one is My Boss is the Devil. The series is The Devil You Know. And book two in the series is called Dueling Shoulder Angels. Ooh. And that starts to split. So book one is all about Nick and his experience with the job offer from Lucifer. Book two introduces the other side of the house. So we start introducing the concept of what God looks like in this universe.
That's cool.
And it also is not what you expect. Plus, we also we have Amy, who turns from more of a supporting character in book one to a secondary main in book two. And the book splits at some point in the book into two POVs.
Okay.
And then the third book, which is called Too Many Gods in the Kitchen. It is a continuation of the second. I can't get too much into it because it really does start spoiling things.
Yes.
But we start moving outside of the Abrahamic like mythos, and we start branching out into other things. So by all accounts, I've had 2 beta readers so far on book 3, and they really enjoyed it. So hopefully that'll be going out to ARCs by like early September, late August.
Okay, that's really cool.
So do you see book 3 as end of the line for this series, or are you going to keep going?
It is the end of the current line. I originally had a plan, so I'm already writing a new book. The working title of this book is called Let Sleeping Gods Lie. And it's a more traditional urban fantasy. It's a little more action like oriented, but it's still tries to subvert expectations on your standard urban fantasy. I'm I'm not likening myself to Stephen King as an author, but as someone who's picked a place and writes there. All of my books take place in New Haven, Connecticut. So this new book takes place in the same city, but if you imagine, it's a technically different urban fantasy world. So it's a different focus. It focuses more on the indigenous mythos and spirituality of the area, the history there, because Connecticut has a really rich indigenous cultural history. And then New Haven has Yale on top of it, which is Ivy League and the least indigenous thing you can think of.
Yes.
So let's just say that the book is going to introduce some conflict there.
Okay.
Nice.
I like that.
It's good.
So did you start your writing journey with this book, or did your writing start prior to that? Did you start like with short stories or in high school or anything like that, or did this story just come up one day and this is where you've been?
When I was in elementary school and middle school, I used to write short stories. Ironically, I actually won an award a long time ago in middle school for one of those. I don't know if I'm dating myself, but if anyone ever participated, there were these contests where they would give you one of those little blue composition books. And in class, you had like the class period to write a short story, and then it would get entered into a contest. And I took first place in one of those a long time ago for a story that I can never recreate because it doesn't exist anymore, and the trophy was lost to time and space.
Yeah.
In high school and college, I wrote more poetry than I did any like even medium form media. So really, my writing journey kind of really began with My Boss is the Devil when I started writing that. And then it's really just kicked into high gear since then, in that I decided I can still write books. And, apparently they're books that people enjoy reading.
Nice.
I absolutely love that.
I do too.
We are coming up to the end of the time here. I want to ask if you could give any one piece of writing advice to starting authors, any author out there, what would that be?
I'll give two short ones. First one is decide what you want, because in the world of self-publishing and traditional publishing, you have to decide why you want to publish. If you want people to read your book, your path is different than if you want to make a living as a writer necessarily, because a lot of that determines what you write. Are you writing to an audience or a genre, or are you writing what you think is interesting? And that's going to determine a lot of different things. But then the second thing is you just have to write. Like, words on the page are the things that count, because you can't agonize about whether you're going to go trad pub or self-published if you don't have a manuscript.
Yeah.
So, my biggest piece of advice is just write. Like, that's, and also like, don't agonize, do not self-edit, just keep writing until you're done. People call it the dirty draft for a reason. Frankly, I don't really do that. My books kind of come out linearly, and I don't have to do too much. But that could be you too. Like, so don't worry about it. Just keep writing.
Yeah, that's the piece of advice, and that's probably the one that we get the most.
The most. Just right.
Yeah, and
don't edit as you go.
It's because it rings so true. There's so much that can get in your way when you're writing stuff down, and when you're trying to write a book, you immediately go to Google and you go, okay, how long's a novel? That's the stupidest thing you can do.
It's as long as
it needs to be as long as it needs to be, especially for self-publishing. And you need to just get the words down, and if it sounds like trash to start with,
that's okay.
Go back and edit it when you're done.
Yep.
So I definitely agree. It's the most relatable advice, and it is the heaviest hitting advice that I think any of us can get.
Well, and it's where we stumble the most.
Yes.
It's where we as authors, because we want, when we get to edits, we don't want to have to butcher what we have. So we're like, well, I can fix this. I can fix that. And it's like, you're not finished. It's never gonna, like,
you
can't publish something that's unfinished. Like, you need to at least have a beginning, middle, and end, and then you can go back and edit everything in between.
Yes. So we love that advice,
Yes.
Ben. And we are going to be tying it off here. So tell us, where can people find you? And what books? Shout them out one more time so people can find you on all the platforms.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. So I have a website. It is benschenkman.com. You can find my profile to spell my last name. There's links there. I have a link tree. But more importantly, so the first book is My Boss is the Devil. It's available on Amazon in all of the expected formats and will soon, within hopefully the next month or so, be available in audiobook as read by the author. And the second book is out now, which is Dueling Shoulder Angels, also available on Amazon. You should read the first one first. You can read the second one as a standalone if for some reason you don't want to read the first. Either way, please grab the books.
Okay.
I'm SF Rogers. My first book, Execration of Autumn, is available on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited in paperback, hardcover, ebook. Looking for voiceover actors. If you want to turn in a recording for that, it is available on ACX. Feel free to do that. Working on the second book, Isolation of Winter. Have no dates for that. It is still a first draft.
I am D.L. Golden. My book, Origins Redux, is available on Amazon in paperback, hardback, and Kindle version. I am working on the audiobook. I've got a narrator on ACX that we are getting ready to iron stuff out with. Odyssea, my second book in the series, is coming out hopefully in October. It's with alpha readers right now, so we will get through that. This has been the Author's Chaos. Ben, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course, anytime. And I'm just going to give that.